know, in this capacity. But I'm glad to see everybody here. I'm glad to be here. Good things are happening with Chi Eta Phi. Last year when I was here, not only was I the recipient of the scholarship, but the young lady that does the worship music helped my mother to produce her books. And now she's working on her third. So I told her I was going to tell you that. So good things happening. This year, I got a call from my cousin, and she was coming in town, and she was always been one of my mentors, and she's going to be relocating here. And she's been an RN ever since I've known her, and that's Sheila Klingskill. And I told her, you're picking a good day to know. Everybody you need to know is going to be in that room today. So I'm glad that she's here with me today. So, when I was asked to do this by Miss Morris, I was thinking to myself, she asked me to be the speaker. What in the world am I going to say? I was scared to death. I'm still scared to death. I said, because there's so many other people that have such credentials behind their name and have a lot more experience than myself. But I was honored when she asked me to do it, and I said, well, maybe they want insight from fresh eyes, or I don't know, maybe they just don't know what they're doing this year. But I was praying, and I said, God, what am I going to say? And I was pacing the floor, and I asked the theme of today's banquet. And I was told that the theme was Back to Basics with Love, and the sub-theme of the Dream Marches On. So as I was surmising, what am I going to say, I was looking up stuff and saying, I don't know, back to basics, back to basics. So my foundation is church. I'm a church girl. So when I don't know what to do, I put myself on a fast. For me, that works because I love to eat. And so when my flesh is weak, my spirit is strong, and I can hear something else other than my stomach growling. So I put myself on a fast, and I said, okay, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to talk about? And I was sitting there one day, and clear as day, I heard, well, if you're going back to something, that means you would have had to start somewhere. And I said, yeah, I know that. And it said, well, then start there. So with that, then I did some research on Chi Eta Phi, and I said, well, if they're asking us to go back to our basics, I need to find out what the basics were. And then I need to find out what the original dream of our founders were. So with that, and I know a lot of you are members, but I see some aren't, and I will apologize in the beginning. I didn't know the children were going to be here. So I'm going to try and restate some things in here, because we have young people with us. So I don't want to offend anybody. But as I was doing the research, I found that on October 16th, 1932, at a time when African American nurses were either barred from membership in state and national nursing professional associations, or had only limited opportunities to participate in these organizations, a visionary nursing leader named Aileen Carrington Ewell, with her bachelor's in arts and a registered nurse, with the assistance of 11 other founding members, established Chi Eta Phi Sorority Incorporated, which is now a national sorority for black professional nurses. As far as I could see, it was the first black professional association for nurses. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I was trying to do research quickly, so but this was the first one. That's what I thought. Today, Chi Eta Phi is a professional association for registered professional nurses and student nurses, both male and female, representing many cultures and diverse ethnic backgrounds. They're headquartered in Washington, D.C. and has over 8,000 members, with more than 90 graduate chapters for nurses who are registered nurses already, and 50 undergraduate chapters, which are for student nurses, located across the United States and in St. Thomas, United States Virgin Islands, and Liberia, West Africa. The charter chapter, Alpha, was organized at Freedman's Hospital in Washington, D.C. for two specific purposes. And I'll go slow if people want to take notes, because if you're like me, I like to take notes. Number one, purpose was to elevate the plane of nursing. Number two, they wanted to increase the interest in the field of nursing. They were guided by the motto, Service for Humanity. The sorority has programs focusing on health promotion, disease prevention, leadership development, mentoring, recruiting and retention, and scholarships. These programs fulfill the mission of the sorority. The leadership development programs are designed to assist membership in the development of effective leadership skills. These programs include membership development, officer development, and the Leadership Fellows Program and the Professional Development Program. And with that, I was thinking and breaking down each program to see where it was that we started and where our dreams started and where we need to return to. The first thing they said was service for humanity. So for me, I like words because words are a means of communication. So you have to say what you mean and mean what you say. So I'm thinking, okay, well, first of all, the word service for humanity. What is service? Service, as defined by Merriam-Webster's dictionary, means the occupation or function of serving. Number 2, the employment as a servant. Number 3, the work performed by one that serves. You can be of good service. The help, the use, the benefit, the contribution to the welfare of others, or the disposal for use. In other words, I'm entirely at your service. The synonyms for the word service that were very important were benevolent, courtesy, grace, as we heard someone earlier state. Us new ones or neophytes can see the grace that you older ones or retired ones or seasoned ones have taught us. There's grace, there's kindness, there's mercy, benefit. You should be a blessing if you're under the service of someone. You should be a godsend, a manna, which is fresh bread or a breath of fresh air, and a privilege. And then I sat back and thought about all of those definitions as a servant. And I said, I've been in the medical field a long time, maybe not as a registered nurse, but I was an LPN for a long time, but before that I started out a medical assistant as my children were younger, because I was a single parent and you need a job and you get a job and you raise your children, and then your children come first and then mommy continues her dreams later once the children get old enough. But I was sitting back and I'm thinking, how many of us are really operating in the capacity of a servant? I know we have these big dreams and why we became a nurse, and you have all these things running through your mind, but when you hit the floor, reality is a different story. You get a big reality check. Once you hit that floor and you're dealing with the patients and their families, the doctors and everyone else, how many of us can still operate in the capacity of a servant? Sometimes I feel like we've lost our obvious God-given natural ability to operate in the role as a servant due to the horrible abuse our ancestors had to endure in the slavery times. I'm thinking, it's a black sorority, we had to get our own. We were banned from being in their professional organizations. You know, the Master Days. And now civil rights have come, so we don't have to say that anymore. You know, we've got some notches on our belt. Has it gone to our head, and have we forgotten what it still means to be of service to somebody? How many of us are still operating as a servant? Did not some of those very mothers that I'm talking about in the past times nurse the children of the very ones that we served on our own breast and still manage to raise their own children, feed their own children, teach their own children? We were in training unbeknownst to us as a human race, giving of ourselves to those who would rather see us hang than see us live. How many of us are really performing our service with benevolence, with grace and with kindness, and with charitable giving? How many still have the charitable mindset that we are very rarely receiving back? I thought about a t-shirt, and I love to wear it because it's such a good t-shirt, and I thought it was cute when I bought it. But once I started doing the research on this, I'm going to have to think 3 times about wearing it. And don't tell my mom, she gave it to me. She found it in New Orleans. And it says, cover it to my ears, I am a nurse. I am here to save your ASS and not kiss it. And I thought it was such a hilarious shirt because, you know, sometimes on the floor, you're not given the respect as a nurse. Some people aren't talking to you so nicely. You're here to help them, and sometimes it's easy, and I know some of you guys are frowning at me, but I can only be real. And I'm trying to be as real as possible. But sometimes it's hard, it's very hard to show that charitable mindset when they're barking at you and all you're there is to help them. But once I started really thinking about this, I don't think I'm going to wear that t-shirt anymore because it's not so cute. You know, it's not so cute, you know? So I may give it away. How many of us are really a godsend to our patients? How many of us walk into rooms, they're constantly on the light, they're constantly whining, they're constantly needing this, they're constantly needing that. How many of us are really able to show mercy to a patient that we know is clearly guilty of raping a child or an elderly person? Are you able to really help that person with benevolence, with no judgment? How many of us are really lending and listening ear to our patient when we know that they're tap dancing on that's the straw that broke the camel's back? They're a box of Fruit Loops already, and you can't believe anything they say. But you think it's just because they've got a history of drug abuse or alcohol abuse. So you're kind of listening and letting it go out the other ear. But what we don't know is they've always been abused. Their husband left them. They've been raped by their parent over and over all their life and told them that their life wasn't worth a hill of beans. And this is where it's left them. So whatever you listen to and whatever you say to them can literally save them more than the medication that you're giving them, just by you not judging them. How many of us can really do that after all of these years of nursing? Our founding members charged us with the challenge to be a service for all humanity. If we discriminate, then we are no better than those that barred us from practicing in those same professional associations and practicing at certain places because of the color of our skin. Our founding members intended for us to promote excellent health and disease promotion. We have to continue to promote health issues in our communities, especially the Black communities, because we don't like going to the doctor. We don't like keeping up with we don't like keeping up with our health because we don't want to incur another bill. Or how about those that can't go because they have no transportation, or they can't afford their medication? Or the men that don't like to go because they're not going to stop frying their chicken anyway. They're going to eat it the way they like it. Or if they're like my father, he doesn't want to hear what the doctor has to say anyway because he's too scared. We have to keep up with our own communities. How about when we're telling our patients about smoking cessation? You know, that's one of the things on the assessment anymore. Those crazy assessments that are supposed to be paperless, but now we're in the rooms for 2 hours. Smoking cessation, but then we're sitting there patting our foot and counting down to the next smoke break ourselves. How about we're trying to tell our patients about better health and better eating habits, and we're caught going through the drive-thru at Wendy's ordering a triple? It happens. We have to practice what we preach. Or how about, if you're like me and sometimes you're the worst patient you ever had, you'll run to the hospital because you know something's wrong with you. You're having chest pains or an asthma attack, like I did the other day, and they wanted to give me nitro and I refused to take it because I knew what it was going to do. I knew the side effects. We're our worst patients. Why go to the doctor if you're not going to trust them and do what they tell you to do? The next program our founders promoted was leadership and development. Did you know that a good leader is first a good follower? And to the little kids, if you're listening, to be a good leader, you got to be a good follower. If you ever want to give directions, you got to learn to take them. Okay? We're raised in a generation now that has almost been raised to challenge